A very warm welcome to our perspective-altering Wellbeing show, where we offer you ways to access your highest levels of energy, vitality, and freedom from dis-ease. This week, we discuss that idea encapsulated by the Jesuits 400 years ago of, "Give me the child and I'll give you the man." Dr. Bruce Lipton explains how children score the environment in those crucial early years by watching closely the reactions of the parents. It's a fascinating discussion for anyone wishing to be a more conscious parent. Dr. Vanessa Ingraham became a naturopathic doctor on the advice of her medical father, whose life changed when his 8-week-old daughter ended up in hospital with neonatal encephalitis after he'd administered the DPT vaccine. She discusses her love of both science and well-being. And John Coombs takes actor Bruce Hopkins through his updated cell well-being test to monitor his progress through the series after his open heart surgery. But first, Dr. Bruce Lipton, in our pre-recorded series, shows that being a parent involves shaping a civilization. Bruce Lipton, the show this week is really themed around social consciousness and how we can elevate that if we're in a good state of health. But it does tie in with what you were talking about last week, which is this idea of sudden human change being possible. Talk to me more about that.
We first have to understand, where does our behavior come from? Because behavior is how we're going to use our biology. An appropriate behavior, then we have good health and vitality, and inappropriate behavior ultimately leads to disease. I say, well, where's behavior? You can say, well, some of it is programmed by genes. They're instincts. In other words, if a ball comes toward my face, I will blink automatically, no consciousness to it. It's a behavior built in. But all the more complex behaviors in life outside those simple instincts are acquired learning, okay? So how do I behave? I said, well, first of all, I have to have a program, a behavioral program. I said, well, interestingly enough, when a child is born, it has no behavioral program. It just got here. How does it know what to do? You say, hey, there's a red light, kid, stop running here. Or, it's like, that makes no sense. So an individual child in our world has to grow up with knowledge, okay? And using that knowledge, then we create a lifestyle and a behavior. And the most important understanding is this: it didn't come from within the individual child. The child downloads it by living in the environment and watching other people. So an infant, when it's born, is not even expressing consciousness, the activity of consciousness in its brain. That is a later development. Around age 7, consciousness kicks in.
So it's just on survival, really?
It's actually just on, stimulus response, more or less, at that point, okay? But also, the brain is observing the environment and recording. So a child's brain is like a camcorder on record for 7 years. I said, well, what's it recording? Its primary program as an infant is to, first thing a child learns is to read the face of the mother and read the face of the father. First thing, within days, couple of days, the child will be able to pick out the mother from anybody else in the room.
The face and the voice, I
The
presume.
face, but the face is more important than the voice, for this reason. Because you can show a bunch of people, you show them pictures of faces, and you say, is that a happy face? Is that an angry face? A sad face? You can read the face, okay? I say, why is it relevant? Because a child actually has no directions as to what is safe and what's not safe. A child is built with the system, an instinct, to look at the mother and the father, look at their faces. So within the first week, it reads faces. Not just who is who, but it understands what a happy face looks like. It understands what an afraid face looks like. And I say, why is it relevant? Because people don't recognize this. When that infant is exploring the world, they don't notice that the first thing the infant does when it comes across something new is look at the mother or the father. Reason. Something new. Is this good for me or bad for me? Instinct says, I have no idea. How would I know? Look at the face of the mother and father. If the mother or father goes, oh, like afraid, like, oh, they're at the stairway and they're going to fall down, they give that look of, oh, the child immediately will recognize not to go near the stairway because it already has connected the face and the object and said, this object creates fear. Or it comes across a toy and the parents look at it and like encourage it, like, with, yeah, smile, go. Then the child has an approval that this thing is safe. So the first thing it does is score the environment. Based on who? On the parents. But then it gets more complicated because as it starts to acquire language, it also observes more complex behavior. It sees how the father responds, let's say, and learns the behavior by what? Recording it. It's not learning it like school, open up a book and study. It's simpler than that. All it has to do is observe it, record it, goes into subconscious and becomes a behavior, okay? So the relevance about that is the child always looks to the behavior of the parents first, the siblings, and the community to see how they should behave. I mean, just think about it. If we were making a rule book, what rules do I need to become a functional member of a family? What rules do I need to become a functional member of a community? And all of a sudden you say, my God, these are thousands of rules. I go, teach an infant thousands of rules. Sit there like in a classroom, try to hold it up in a chair and say, listen, I'm going to give you 1,000 rules. And the answer is you can't do that. Nature took care of it. What did nature do? I observed the parents. I can see that my father talks to me different than my father talks to other people's kids. My father talks to me different than he talks to adults. Then he talks to my mother. Then he talks to the policeman. It's like, oh my God, there are nuances right there, half a dozen ways that my father could talk. Well, I learn by what? Just watching how my father does it. So the behavior that I first experienced, which is programmed in my subconscious mind for 7 years, that's how long the record process, my brain is operating in a lower vibrational frequency. When you put wires on a person's head, you read vibrations called electroencephalograph, EEG, different levels of vibration. First 7 years, the vibration is below consciousness as predominant. And I say, but if it's below consciousness, then what's the child doing? I say, theta is the vibration level for predominant level. I say, what's that? Imagination? I go, yeah, children under 7 mix the real world and the imaginary world because their brain operating theta is imagination. So the mother says, give me the broom. The child is riding it, looking at the mother like, I don't even know what you're talking about, I'm on a horse. And so imagination has overridden reality. But theta is hypnosis. So that means first 7 years, I download by what? Not any more than just observing and then lodging that behavior into my subconscious. So even before you become conscious, you have a database of behavior. Well, if they're good behaviors, great. If they're negative behaviors, yeah, you got those as well, too. And the idea was, how'd you get it? By just observing the individual, okay?
Two things that strike me there, the importance of possibly even before conception or conception to 7 years. Those are possibly the most important years of a human's life.
Absolutely, because those are the years that will determine the outcome of the child. And you say, well, is this new science? I go, science-wise, it's new because I can show you the mechanisms now. Is the idea new? I go, 400 years, the Jesuits have said, give me a child until it's 7 and I will show you the man. People didn't understand, what are they boasting about? That's what irritated me because I realize now it's boasting. It says, if I get to program your first 7 years, I determine the outcome of your life.
John, you deal a lot with the support of women who want to have healthy children, but this has a whole other angle to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, we've got charts on this that we take our clients through and we show them these stages of development and we discuss the importance. So a lot of the care we're doing is with young women and preparing them so when they have children they actually understand this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And you know, for myself, you know, practically with my own grandchildren, I've been trying to train my children, particularly my daughter, around things like this. So we're well aware of what Bruce is talking about and we have systems in place and we have a whole range of therapists trained in their individual modalities that can actually help nurture somebody through these stages, whether it's the mother with the child or the child itself. And so as much we're doing as therapy is education and training.
Because the second thing that struck me from what Bruce said is the horrors for a child of being in a traumatic home, and we have a very high incidence in this country of child abuse. So the implications are absolutely horrendous of the programming that's going on.
You know, it'd be interesting if it was only in this country, but this is a global problem. And the whole idea is this: if parents have no idea that their behavior is programming their child's life, then no responsibility to behave in any particular way, and they don't see that they are modeling the future of our planet.
So how, Bruce, how do we, or John, how do we help parents with this?
Well, there's a whole lot of repatterning therapies and programs in place, and there are numerous of them. And a lot of them are mind-body, some of them trauma relief type stuff. And again, you know, with training, just as you can, as we're saying, what makes you sick can also make you well if you reverse the process.
And some of it's just playing this over and over on the internet and understanding what this is, what you're explaining, Bruce.
Knowledge is power. If you had no knowledge that you were shaping the future of civilization by being a parent, then your behavior would be irrelevant. But if you all of a sudden know that what you're doing is going to change the health and fate of your child by how you're behaving, all of a sudden it says, oh, wait, conscious parenting, that's a responsibility.
Thank you so much. We will leave that there, but there is obviously more of it in The Biology of Belief, Bruce's other book, Spontaneous Evolution and the Honeymoon Effect. Bruce, we'll talk to you next week. Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Bruce Lipton.
3 of the main factors in modern life are sleep, fatigue and immunity. We've got Chrissy in the Hocat at the moment. It's going to help you, Chrissy, with the fatigue you've been experiencing, help you sleep tonight, improve your immunity. Added benefits is it's going to actually help you improve your skin quality and anti-aging. If you'd like to go in the draw for this, go onto our Facebook page and follow the instructions.
Welcome, Vanessa Ingraham. Tell me your story, because you came to this from a father who was in fact a doctor, very mainstream medical.
Yeah.
How did you come to natural medicine?
Well, I kind of grew up in a family that were really health conscious and health minded to begin with. So my dad was a medical doctor, kind of classically trained, and used to practice kind of very conventionally. And then there was a really interesting thing that happened when I was born. So he was seeing a lot of pediatric patients, a lot of kids, and doing well baby visits. And at that point, like I said, he was kind of following the standards of care and practicing as he'd been taught without really asking too many questions. Well, when I was 8 weeks old, I had received my first the DTaP, or the DPT vaccine. And unfortunately, I had a really bad reaction to it. I ended up in neonatal intensive care with severe encephalitis.
And that was immediate. It happened immediately.
Yeah, it happened
following
the evening, and then the next day I was in the hospital. And at that point, it was very traumatic for my parents, because it was something that he'd been administering to every other child that he'd been helping, and but it didn't look too good. The hospital chaplain had basically talked to my parents at that point and said there's nothing they could do, and go home and pray.
And you're 8 weeks old.
8 weeks old,
Tiny
and first baby of my dad, who's a doctor, and that really really shook him up. At that point, he really wanted to quit medicine and just kind of give it all up. And luckily, he was also kind of into yoga, and he had a yoga teacher who suggested he travel to India and Germany and do some kind of research and investigate kind of holistic and integrated medicine, which he did. And that kind of led him down this journey of kind of, just questioning everything, really going back to all the things he'd been trained, kind of asking why he'd been trained that way, and then kind of reassessing it on his own.
And what was the effect on you growing up of all of that?
Well, and us growing up, it was great for us. I never got another shot, so it was awesome. As a kid, no one likes needles. So.
Yes. And then you had very healthy food, I take
absolutely.
it. Did you?
And
Did
then,
you look at right from the diet through?
Yeah, absolutely. At that point, he got really into macrobiotic food. So it's a system of food combining, which really assesses and looks at the energetic components of food, and kind of looks at food more than just nutrition, as an energetic balancing kind of system.
It's interesting too. It looks at seasonal foods. You
Absolutely,
eat seasonally
yeah.
too.
So you're eating kind of more in congruency with your environment and with your body type.
So if there are autumn growing foods, you eat those in autumn.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, lovely. And then, what was the other effect on you? Were you growing up questioning equally?
I always loved science. It's always been my most passion. I've always had a weird intuition about science.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, I was able to, in school in 7th grade, I could explain photosynthesis without having actually learned it in a conventional sense, just because I kind of could understand how natural systems work.
What do you put that down to?
I'm not sure. It's just been a passion, and always been interested in the natural world, and I've always just been fascinated and kind of kept that awe about everything.
I ask that because actually children are little geniuses.
Yeah,
they're
absolutely.
observing their world, aren't they? And if they're left to do that,
And
it's
because
amazing what they pick up.
Definitely, and because my dad had kind of had that knocked into him to kind of question everything, he allowed me to question everything and didn't try to indoctrinate me in one way or the other.
Wonderful. So where did you choose to go for your studies?
Well, I started out at, I wanted to be a large animal veterinarian to begin with. So I started off at the University of Georgia in the US, and I was doing animal science pre-veterinary studies for a year. And then I realized quickly that animal studies and pre-vet was really food animal production. And so being at that point as vegetarian, seeing the way food animals were produced and realizing that they're just, they're worth really nothing more than their cost per pound of meat at slaughter.
In this industrialization
Absolutely.
of farming that's happened in the last 50 years.
Yeah, and I'm not against eating meat by any means, but for me that wasn't really the right path. And
Because it wasn't ethical? Because it wasn't kind to the animals?
it just, I realized that, treating cows and, it's going to be, these decisions that are based on economics, not on the care of the animal. So it really wasn't the path I wanted to go down.
So what did you do then?
At that point, I got kind of interested in human medicine because I realized, people will do a lot more for their, their grandpa, one of their dairy cows.
Yes, yes.
So you kind of, at that point, I wanted to become a conventional doctor like my dad. Kind of, my mindset was, I could, go through conventional medical school and then kind of, practice as I wanted to, as he did. But at that point, a lot of the medical boards were becoming a lot stricter on the way doctors practiced and registered physicians practiced. And he suggested that I don't go to conventional medical school, but instead I went to a naturopathic medical school.
And what degree did you get there?
It's an ND, it's a naturopathic doctor.
Which we don't have here in New Zealand, do we?
No, so how it works in North America is that there's, so you have to do a 4-year bachelor degree, and then you can attend a residential, so it's in-person, everyday medical school, during which the first 2 years you study almost alongside your conventional colleagues. So you're doing pathology, you're having anatomy, cadaver lab, you're doing very standard medical courses, diagnosis, physical exam, and learning all that. And then within the second 2 years and towards your internship, you can kind of decide not to do a hospital residency, but do, learn about acupuncture and botanical medicine, more about nutrition, and kind of go down that path, which was much more appropriate for me because I didn't like the idea of having, 12-hour shifts overnight at the hospital anyway at that point.
Would that be good for New Zealand, John, do you think? Should we be bringing that in?
It will come. But what's happening is a lot of people choosing the lifestyle in New Zealand, so there's a lot of people who graduate with doctors of naturopathy coming to New Zealand to work, and they're getting the quality of life down here.
And our naturopathic training from the naturopaths you've talked to, compared with your training in North America, is there a vast difference?
It's a little bit different in North America. So we have board exams just like conventional medical doctors do. So after our second year of school, we do our first board exam, which is called NPLEX and PLEX, and it's similar to the board exams that MDs do. And then after our fourth year, we do another set of board exams that include a clinical component.
So it's very technical. Has it helped you very much, do you think, having all that extra
Absolutely,
medical
I love this
training?
stuff. Yeah, and stuff like a proper physical exam. I think that's important, for anyone, treating a patient.
So take me to your practice then. Tell me what your practice focuses on mainly now.
Mainly, for integrative and naturopathic medicine, we're always interested in getting to the root cause. So no matter if we're treating someone for sleep disorder or, someone having symptoms of menopause, we're always assessing kind of a little deeper than just kind of Band-Aid solutions.
And that is a big pressure. John, you might have something to contribute here for doctors. I feel for a lot of doctors because they're under such time pressure. They can't really investigate as widely as they might like to, can they?
Most of the doctors I know are very frustrated by that, but they're bound by certain criteria and regulations and funding and whatnot.
And what's the implication for the patient of that?
Well, you're treating symptoms, not causes in that situation, as opposed to causes, not symptoms.
So they have to get people in the door and get them out in a certain time frame?
That's the way it tends to be. So really, for somebody to get well, you've got to get to the cause of the problem. And the science is all there to analyse and investigate that these days, and then put a natural solution in place, because nature, we come out of nature and we are natural.
And Vanessa, was it Hippocrates who first said, let food be thy medicine?
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell us some of the cases that you've seen improve from this naturopathic perspective.
A great one is I was helping a patient who was in hospital with ulcerative colitis, which is can be a debilitating inflammatory bowel condition with some autoimmune components. And he was in a severe flare-up, and before I saw him in the hospital, and was put on prednisone. And at that point, they couldn't get control of just the out-of-control runaway inflammation that he had in his gut. He lost about 20 kilos. He was a little guy to begin with, and just not doing well. At that point, he had a consult with his kind of team at the hospital, and they wanted to prescribe Remicade, which is a really strong immunosuppressive therapy. At that point, luckily, I was able to kind of get in because I was doing some work with the hospital there. And I had a discussion with the head of gastroenterology at McMaster's University, and he had said that, I don't know what you're doing here. There's no data at all to suggest that there's any dietary components to inflammatory bowel disease. And at that point, I just we're talking about the gut. How could there not be? Luckily, we was able to, with some assistance and with consent of the family, we were able to get the patient out of hospital and avoid the treatment. And then at which point we kind of overhauled his diet and removed some severely inflammatory foods.
Such as?
For him, the big ones were shellfish and dairy. So once he had ceased those foods, within a week, his immune system was already calmed down. He had to stay on the prednisone for a little while, but we were able to kind of deal with the side effects of that and help him wean off. And just by changing those two things and addressing stress, which is also a huge component of his inflammation, he's been, how long has it been? 10 years now without a significant flare-up. So we're very happy.
Wonderful, and it's a wonderful example, John, isn't it, of two sides of medical treatment working together with respect for each other, not having to overwhelm one another.
Exactly.
Say my way is the only way.
Yeah.
That's really the way through.
Yeah.
So what else have you found has been very useful with food, with changing people's diets?
Well, getting back, just the basics, getting back to natural foods, getting off of the processed food, the trans fats, all the sugars and the artificial sweeteners.
Yes.
If there's one thing or two things you can do in your diet is eat more vegetables and eat less sugar. That's, every single person is going to benefit from that.
There's a lot about sugar out there. I'm interested, you mentioned dairy in that case just now, and we are a big dairy-eating country. Where do you stand on the dairy intake?
Dairy is a tricky one because it's not that it's a bad food. I don't believe there are good foods and bad foods in the natural world. But the problem is dairy is so prevalent and it's so different from kind of the dairy we kind of evolved with that a lot of people tend to have undiagnosed allergies, not just to lactose, but also to casein, which is the protein found in milk. And for a lot of people, especially cultured dairy products, raw dairy products, they can be fine. But just the amount of, eating cheese with every meal and milk, 2 glasses a day or whatever the recommendations are, is unnecessary and I think going to be harmful in the long term.
So to finish, where would you recommend someone begins if they want to make some good changes towards healthier gut, healthier lifestyle?
Get back to the natural foods and eat more vegetables. Start to look at, we're in the age of the gut-brain connection, so realizing that health really begins in the gut. Everything from our hormone balance to our neurotransmitters in our brain to our immune system are all kind of based in what's going on in our gastrointestinal tract. So
all of which is affected by the food we eat.
Absolutely. So just eating more vegetables, looking kind of back to fermented and cultured foods is really important.
Yes.
And getting off the processed stuff.
It's a lovely idea, isn't it, John? It's more towards the diet of our grandparents and great-grandparents.
Absolutely.
They ate like this, fresh from the garden.
And they ate butter and they ate milk, but it was from the cow outside. It's not as big of an issue in New Zealand because the cows are grass-fed, but in the U.S., cows that are, getting bovine growth hormone and they're eating grain and they're sick and they have mastitis, it's not a healthy food, I don't think, in the U.S.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. Wonderful to talk to you.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Vanessa. So your heart's doing a lot better now, Bruce, I can see.
Yes, a heart of stone.
We've done a few of these cell well-beings now.
Yeah.
And we've got quite dramatic improvement in some areas. How are you basically feeling at the moment?
I'm actually feeling pretty good. Yeah. Still, wake up once a night, but I have noticed that I'm tending to wake up closer to like 5 o'clock or so. So I'm getting. If I get to bed early enough, that's a big part of it for me, is making sure I stop watching TV series on streaming.
Yes, because the blue light's not that good for you, know that.
Yeah.
And you're following the breathing programs that Vivian's been.
Yeah. It has been really interesting that through any given day, there are a number of times where I'll suddenly, I'll just come into my awareness that I want to extend those breaths and keep them. So that the inhalation and the exhalation are the same length.
Yes. Because as you start to wake up a bit earlier than you want to, if you start to do that, you can probably go back to sleep quite easily.
I must admit, the light therapy, the biophotonic light therapy sessions, I'm finding I'm going off into nice little zones during those.
Because we've been reprogramming your brainwave patterns, so now you're getting used to that. Because it got to the stage you were getting very little delta phase and not enough theta phase either. So you need that delta phase at night. Ideally, you should be getting about 3 of those every night.
Right.
And that's going to give you the rejuvenation that's necessary, the cellular rejuvenation. So let's just look at the cell well-being again. Where we've got to, your protein levels have improved. They're still lower than you want them to be, so we really need you to be upping the protein. It's so important, not just for nutritional value, but for detoxification. So you've got the report here that's outlining that. What we've noticed, the middle of winter now, so one of the things is your system's having to take more energy just to sort of get by. So what we've found is you're down on silicon, calcium, molybdenum and potassium levels. So we need to up those with a multi-mineral. And your omega-6s are down, so your essential fatty acids are down, and again for cellular repair. So we just need you to up your omega oils. It's easy with either a fish oil or some vegetable oils, and you'll see on the back of this.
I got a hold of some of those from here the other day when I came in. Yeah.
And you'll see what we're recommending here, these various oils on the back page here.
Yeah.
So you've got a full nutritional complement here that we're looking to recommend for you, as long as you avoid the foods that we're suggesting to avoid. But you don't have a big issue with foods that you're intolerant to at the moment. Now, we had picked up a virus. It doesn't identify what sort of virus, but that's just going to be weakening your system a bit. So again, being the middle of winter, there's a lot of viruses floating around. So just protect your immune system. You're doing that with vitamin C already.
Yeah.
So you can up that. It's just learn to self-regulate your vitamin C.
Yeah.
So,
I had a couple of days where I was laid low, actually.
Yes.
It was quite strange how it was just specifically 2 days, and then I started getting back on board, with being able to do stuff, and that I'm pretty sure that the paste, the vitamin C paste you gave me, that I bought from here,
the lipospheric.
Yeah, that was really, I think that really did the trick, actually.
So what we've got, Bruce, the program's itemised for you. We are going to follow through with your Thyroflex, another test. I'm going to send the results off to Dr. Darryl Turner. But all in all, I'm very happy with the progress you're making. So thanks for following us through with us.
Cool.
We're very pleased with the way you're getting on.
I'm pretty damn pleased the way, I feel like I'm back on board.
Great.
As I was pre the operation, in a sense, physically,
Yeah. So keep up the program, regular cell well-beings, we'll check your thyroid again, more of the HOCATs, regular photonic light, and practicing your multiple brain.
Yeah. Cool.
Great. Thanks very much.
Thank you, John.
What a wonderful discussion today with Bruce Lipton, showing the acute observation skills of the infant and the child. Almost from day one, the baby's watching the faces of the parents, he says, and learning about the world that he or she sees in their expressions. As Bruce said, the child scores the environment based on the parents' reactions, and all those observations are then lodged in the child's subconscious. I loved his idea that if you have the understanding that you're shaping a civilization by being a parent, then conscious parenting is a responsibility, not merely an option. I also enjoyed Dr. Vanessa Ingraham and her journey to becoming a qualified naturopathic doctor in America, studying alongside medical students. And just simple advice for your health: get off processed foods, eat more vegetables, and far less sugar. Next week we talk biodynamic farming and the lessons for India from going down the genetic engineering route. Dr. Bruce Lipton has been helping Indian farmers recover from devastating third-year crop losses, which led to thousands of farmer suicides. It's a salutary lesson in the importance of looking after our Mother Earth and learning about soil health. Without that, we and life on Earth can't survive. As part of that move to ethical production of food and goods, we speak with Brendan Hoare of BioPure about how New Zealand ethical businesses can promote goods to a world hungry for clean and green and toxin-free. And we also have an impassioned discussion with a Melbourne-based Kiwi who advises businesses and ministers of agriculture around the world about soil health and healthy farming methods. Graham Sate has a crucial message for all of us who aspire to a healthier body within a healthier world. I look forward to your company next week to learn more about a well-being world within and without. Until then, I wish you well-being.